Many NBA franchises have to make major decisions when it comes to trading away their star players. Some guys, they don't want to be there anymore, or there are guys who are very loyal to their franchise, or the franchise, they simply want to take a different direction. Guys like DeMar DeRozan, Kawhi Leonard, and Derrick Rose are just a few examples of guys who have been traded away from franchises in those type of situations. But today I wanted to talk about the top 4 best trades at the trade deadline since the 2000s. Cue that intro.
When my grandma died, I jumped out.
At number 4, Ron Artest. Back in the 01-02 NBA season, Ron Artest was just in his 3rd year of his NBA career, and he was having a career season at the time. He was averaging around 15.6 points, and of course he was playing extremely good defense because that's what Ron Artest was mostly known for. But at the time, the Bulls were in a rebuild mode. They only won 21 games the season prior. But in a shocking move, the Bulls decided to trade Ron Artest, even though Ron Artest was showing glimpses of possibly being a really great player in the NBA the next few seasons. So the Pacers ended up trading for Travis Best, Norm Richardson, Jalen Rose, and the 2nd round pick to the Chicago Bulls for Brad Miller and, of course, Ron Artest. This trade will end up being a good trade for the Indiana Pacers and not that bad of a trade for the Chicago Bulls because Jalen Rose at the time was an extremely young and upcoming player, and he will go on to have a pretty good career when he was in Chicago. But this situation was a really good situation for the Pacers because the Pacers, they had a pretty good team at the time. They had, of course, Reggie Miller, they had Al Harrington, and Jermaine O'Neal. They had a pretty decent squad, but Ron Artest struggled when he first got to Indiana. He was only averaging around 10 points a game for the remainder of that season. But for the next 2 seasons, he improved a lot, and he helped the Pacers in the 03-04 NBA season go to the Eastern Conference semifinals. They would win 61 games. They had Rick Carlisle as their head coach at the time, a guy who ended up winning, of course, a championship for Dallas Mavericks. But the Pacers improved extremely well. They were seen as a team that could possibly win an NBA championship. But fast forward to the 04-05 NBA season, and the Pacers, they acquired Steven Jackson. They also had got rid of Al Harrington, but Steven Jackson was a big plus for them. And into the 7th game of the NBA season, Ron Artest and the Indiana Pacers, they played against the Detroit Pistons, a team that they had a pretty big rivalry with because they lost to them, of course, to the Eastern Conference semifinals, and the infamous Malice at the Palace happens. Ron Artest goes into the stadium and fights fans and things. They escalate to something extremely crazy. Of course, a riot happens at the Malice at the Palace, and Ron Artest, he ends up getting suspended for the entire season without pay. Also, the other Indiana Pacers players, they got suspended, and that's really it for their season. They ruined their season, and Ron Artest, he pretty much ruined his career at the time, and he was seen as one of the most hated players in the NBA. Once he came back, they were never really the same again. Ron Artest has had some pretty controversial moments in his NBA career. Let's check out some of these crazy moments that has happened in his career.
I'm so sorry to humiliate you on TV by pulling your shorts down. I won't do it again.
That's not only ejection, that's going to be a suspension and should be. What a disgrace. Well, he has been ejected, and as said, the suspension's going to follow.
At least Ron Artest wound up going on to win an NBA championship for the Lakers, but he could have been a lot higher on this list if he didn't waste his potential at the time, because he was hot-headed. Coming in at number 3, we have Ray Allen. At the time, the Bucks were seen as a decent team. They made the playoffs. They won 52 games the season prior, and they even won a playoff series with Ray Allen on the team. But the team had really bad team chemistry issues coming into the next season. They could not get along at all, especially Ray Allen and George Karl. They never really saw eye to eye, and that led to Ray Allen getting traded to the Seattle Supersonics, which at the time was just a blockbuster trade. I mean, it's just crazy in my opinion because a team, they chose the coach over the player, which is my opinion is just not right. I think the players are always over the coaches. Trade involved Ronald Murray and Ray Allen and a 1st round pick, and the Sonics, they would trade Gary Payne and Desmond Mason to the Bucks. And after the trade, it led to George Karl saying that Ray Allen, his attention to detail at times was antagonistic to his teammates, and he had to work to find his comfort level with them, which is just extremely insanely crazy in my opinion. And it led to Ray Allen saying there was no animosity, just angst, and it felt like I was the only guy in his way. To me, there was definitely a lot of ego, but I just can't believe that a coach would actually go to that extent with a player on this team, especially a franchise player on this team. But at the end, things ended up going extremely well for Ray Allen. He ended up, of course, getting traded to the Sonics, and they ended up losing, of course, in the playoffs. They were an average team at best. They had one season where they won over 50 games, but the Seattle Supersonics and Ray Allen could never really find success. Ray, he ended up signing with the Boston Celtics, and he would go on to win an NBA championship, and then he would go on to Miami and win a championship, and he hit one of the greatest clutch shots in NBA history. So he ended his career as one of the all-time leading scorers for three-pointers. He's an NBA champion, and he's a Hall of Famer. Coming in at number 2, Rasheed Wallace. Rasheed Wallace at the time was a really good player. He was almost really at the end of his prime, and he had some really good playoff runs in his NBA career at that time, solely against Kobe Bryant and the Shaq-led Lakers. But the Blazers ended up trading him to the Hawks. But the crazy part is, the man only played one game with the Hawks. Yes, one game. So the next day when they decided to trade him, it was a 3-team trade involving the Celtics, of course, the Hawks, and the Pistons. And the Pistons, they would get Rasheed Wallace and also Mike James. Should have explained the trades, but that's a very complicated thing because there's a few amount of players that were involved in this trade. Key thing from that trade is that the Celtics, they got young assets and draft picks, and the same could be said about the Atlanta Hawks. They got young assets and draft picks, but they also got a few veteran players. But this trade for the Pistons was extremely good trade at the time because the Pistons, they already really had a good team, but they needed that one more guy to add to their title hopes. At the time on their roster, they had Chauncey Billups, Ben Wallace, Tyshawn Prince, and Richard Hamilton. So adding Rasheed Wallace to that team really helped take them to another level. They will go on to win the 2004-05 NBA championship, beating the Lakers in 5 games, which at the time just seemed insane because the Lakers, they were pretty much a super team. They had, of course, Kobe, Karl Malone, Shaq, they had Gary Payton. They had a lot of extremely good players on their team. And the fact that the Pistons, they won and they didn't really have any all-stars at all on their team, it just proves that this team, that at the end of the day, basketball is just a sport and it's about teamwork, and that's what they showed. And the Pistons, they will end up going to the playoffs and making it deep in the playoffs the seasons after they won the championship. Number 1, Pau Gasol. At the time, the Lakers were trying to compete for a championship, and especially since Kobe was still the man in LA and he was getting older in age. But years before, Kobe was absolutely carrying the Lakers to the playoffs, and of course he was losing. But now they are in a situation where they wanted to win now. They had Andrew Bynum, he was a young and upcoming star as well, and they wanted to get Pau Gasol, and they did. They ended up trading Marc Gasol and Pau Gasol, which is really one of the most famous trades that has happened because, you know, they're trading away 2 brothers, and Marc Gasol, he would go on to have a really good career for the Grizzlies. But this trade is also famous for having one of the biggest draft busts in NBA history, the most infamous Kwame Brown. They also had Jarvis Criddenton in that trade, and he's in prison for life right now, which is just absolutely sad. Also, if you wanted to learn more about that, then go in my description down below. I'll have an article about it and you can read it. The Lakers, they also gave the Grizzlies 2 first-round draft picks. But this trade was really great for Kobe Bryant, really, because the Lakers, they had Lamar Odom, they had Derek Fisher, Ron Artest, Andrew Bynum, and now they have Pau Gasol, which was a really good supporting cast for Kobe because they could go on and compete for championships, and they would go on to compete with Boston, but of course they ended up losing the 2008 NBA championship. But that next season, they'll go on to the championship again, and they will play the Orlando Magic, and they will end up going on to beat the Magic, and then they will go on to next season to finally play the Celtics, and they will end up beating the Celtics as well. And that really helped Kobe Bryant's career and proved that he could win without Shaq. Really, this trade was for Kobe Bryant, And Paul Gasol, he did contribute extremely well for the Lakers. He helped add 2 championships to his resume, and he had a pretty good NBA career as well. But what do you guys think? Do you agree with my list? If you do, let me know down in the comment section below. Like and subscribe for more great content. Have a good day. Peace.